Thank you, Mr President. I move that the report on the Select Committee on Grocery Pricing in South Australia be noted.
Mr Sims.
Thank you, Mr President. I want to make a few brief comments about the report. Before I do so, I would like to take this opportunity to thank everybody that was involved with this committee, in particular the members of the committee, the Honourable Jing Lee, the Honourable Ben Hood, the Honourable Reggie Martin, the Honourable Mira El-Danawi, and of course Ms Leslie Guy and Dr Robinson, Mary Robinson, for all of the support that they provided as well. I think it's fair to say that this committee was timely in that there is significant concern in the South Australian community around food prices and the impact that high food prices are having. I think it's fair to say also that there was a view on the committee that, or the prevailing view of the committee was that the federal government are looking at some of these issues, and so we wanted to really focus our attention on what we could recommend for the state government to do within our jurisdiction. And I feel very proud of the recommendations that have been agreed upon by the committee, because I think they are very sensible and they're tangible. I won't talk through all of them, but there's a few that I think it's worth highlighting in particular. Some of the recommendations relate to the need to improve competition in food retailers here in South Australia. There was some evidence that the committee received from the Woolworths Group in particular that high food prices here in South Australia was actually being driven by the preponderance of independent food retailers here in our state. Well, the committee didn't accept that assertion. Rather, we thought that actually a lack of competition is one of the big factors that's driving up food prices here in SA, and we came up with a range of recommendations that would potentially address that. One of the big issues that came to a light through the committee was the impact of planning laws on grocery prices. So, for instance, it is becoming commonplace in some regional communities for big food retailers to buy up greenfield sites and to then put smaller retailers out of business. And one of the recommendations in the report is for the Minister for Planning to investigate potential amendments to state planning laws to prevent rezoning of greenfield sites to retail in instances where this would have a negative impact on existing business. We've also made a recommendation for the Minister for Planning to investigate opportunities to prioritise green space in new developments, to encourage community gardens and therefore access to fresh fruit and vegetables, and also for the government to look at what it could do to crack down on the practice of land banking by major food retailers, another big issue that is contributing to lack of competition in the market. There's some recommendations in here too around the state government using its procurement guidelines to prioritise smaller food retailers where it has the opportunity to do so. In addition to anti-competition, another key factor that was flagged by the committee in terms of contributing to high food prices was the stringent nature of food packaging standards and the aesthetic standards that are applied to fruit and vegetables and the like. I will say one of the things I found really fascinating about being on this inquiry is learning more about the packaging requirements that are placed on our foods. I had no idea, for instance, that Australia imposes such significant and stringent requirements on the packaging of potatoes and the display of potatoes and the impact that that might have on pricing. For instance, here in Australia, we actually put potatoes out for sale on an individual basis, whereas over in Europe, they're sold in a pre-packaged bag. and so that, of course, has an impact on pricing here locally, because it means that more potatoes have to be potentially discarded if they're no longer looking aesthetic. And so one of the recommendations of the committee is that the state government review packaging standards and cosmetic specifications to ensure that these factors aren't contributing to unnecessary food waste. We also are proposing that what's that? Sorry. The other proposal is that the Parliament legislate to increase the social responsibility of big supermarkets, including mandating their donation of damaged food, to ensure that supermarkets are responsible for the waste that they produce. I think it was concerning to hear evidence at the inquiry that some of the big food retailers are discarding food that is not aesthetic, and we're in the middle of a food crisis. There was an example provided, for instance, of bananas, big bananas, being unappealing to some consumers. That struck me as a curious struck me as a curious proposition, Mr. President. I know lots of people that would disagree with that, because, you know, something like a banana could be turned into, you know, banana bread, range of other practices. So again, let's look at some of these factors that might be contributing to high prices, and that's what the committee's advocated. We've also suggested that there's a role for the federal government to play here, in particular looking at things like increasing migration to South Australia to provide more workers to the farming sector, looking of course at things like increasing income support for South Australians that are struggling, looking at national initiatives to improve transparency. We also make some recommendations regarding cost of living relief. I think that the committee recognised the really valuable work of Foodbank and other organisations that provide support, but we also noted that it is not the role of these organisations to plug all of the gaps. What is needed is broader structural reform, but we have made some recommendations for things that the government could do to provide more short-term relief. In particular, things like expanding access to free school breakfasts and lunches, and looking at ensuring that Foodbank is appropriately serviced by public transport, particularly in regional areas, and also, of course, potential legislative action on things like grocery prices, rent, energy and transport, recognising that people that are paying more money for groceries are also paying more money for rent and electricity and so on. So that's a snapshot, Mr. President, of some of the key recommendations. All of the recommendations, bar one, were supported by the full committee and across party lines. And I think that speaks to the fact that they are sensible recommendations. Certainly from my perspective, of course, there's always scope to go a little bit further, but I think where we've landed is good and provides a potential roadmap for the government if they wish to take it up. I hope that the government will take the time to look over this report over the Christmas break. It's a time of year when lots of South Australians will be focused on food prices and the cost of living more generally. And I hope that the government can come back in the new year, having looked at this report and committing itself to take action on some of the very sensible recommendations. And also, just before concluding, I should thank all those organisations and individuals that participated in the inquiry. We engaged with all of the key stakeholders, including business. So we heard from Foodland, we heard from Aldi, we heard from Ausveg, Woolworths, Coles, and we also heard from a lot of the organisations that assist vulnerable South Australians, organisations like Foodbank, SACOS, SA Unions, and we also had an opportunity to undertake a regional trip to meet with primary producers and to meet with other key stakeholders. And I should also thank the Honourable Ben Hood for his assistance in coordinating that trip to Mount Gambier. With that, I conclude my remarks.